So, a couple of things. I titled this, there we go, Analyzing Petabytes of Data in the Cloud Using SQL. Fortunately, you don't have to have petabytes to use Snowflake. That's the first thing that's important. But if you do, we are a petabyte scale platform. So the interesting thing about that is typically when you think of petabytes, you think big data, right? Not necessarily data warehousing. But Snowflake, the product, is actually a data warehouse in the cloud offered as a service, right? So that is what Snowflake is all about. And we're leveraging SQL to do that piece of work. And that's a big deal, right? Because all of the tools that you use to do analytics typically come from a BI space, right? That's the first thing you do is reporting before you do advanced analytics. You want to be able to give your end users access to all of that data, and you don't just want them to be a few users. A lot of our customers are now executing on a data democratization strategy, right? They want to give everybody access to this large volume of data, which is typically called a data lake. And we allow customers to do that. So we scale to petabytes of data, and we scale to thousands of users. Quick chart. I only have time for 3 charts. If I go late, then everybody goes late, so I'm going to have to move quickly. So a couple things. We just went generally availability on Azure today. That was the big announcement. Yay! I know, that is a big deal. And we have teamed very well with the Microsoft team. Our CEO, Bob Muglia, was actually the president of the Server and Tools division at Microsoft, so we have a little bit of a relationship there, which is nice. But this is going to be, I think, a fantastic relationship moving forward. And just, you know, kind of where Snowflake plays, I mentioned we're a data warehouse. A lot of the things that we're doing is moving people from kind of traditional appliance-based data warehouses, let's say Netezza, Teradata, maybe Exadata, some of those platforms, into the cloud, right, for scalability, primarily for scalability reasons, but also for ease of use, because we are data warehousing as a service. And the other thing we do when we start talking about petabytes, we were talking about a data lake. So down here, a lot of my customers are moving from, let's say, Hadoop platforms on-premise into the cloud. So they're using cloud storage platforms. They'll maybe have a staging area, or call it a zone, right, where they'll load all of their raw data. And then they will do some type of ELT or some type of process in order to curate the data and then load that into a data platform, right, like a Snowflake. The interesting thing about Snowflake is we can actually also act as a layer on top of that in order to have direct access to, I'm going to zoom through that, but have direct access to, I should get my thing. I'm pointing with the laser pointer. You have direct access to external tables, right? So you can define a table. It's a relational database in Snowflake, and that's what I'm going to show you as part of the demo today, and access the data that's sitting in your Azure Blob Storage. Or you can access data even on other cloud platforms as well. But you can pull it all together on the Azure platform, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so with that, one other thing. So Snowflake, the key tenet for Snowflake. We have separated compute from storage. Now you'll see, when I said that 2 or 3 years ago, people were like, wow, that's awesome. I say that today, and they're like, well, of course, that's the only way this really works, right? And that is the key thing. But the thing that we have is the cloud storage layer, and that is managing all of our metadata, and that's what makes us able to have multiple clusters. So each one of these gears represents a cluster. You can have multiple clusters that can all access the same data. Oh, thanks. Without contention. I'm trying to figure this out. And so now what I can do is typically data warehousing, you load all your data at night so that when people come in the morning, you don't have contention. What we can do is we can actually load data and query data at the same time with multiple clusters without contention. And this is a big deal. This is how we can scale to literally thousands of users hitting the system, because now we can have all of these clusters, all of this processing power that can hit the underlying infrastructure and have a single source of truth. Okay, so that was meant to kind of wet your whistle. Now I got to go to the demo. So, being a relational database, there's multiple ways to get into Snowflake, but from an end user perspective, right, you can use Power BI, you can use ODBC, JDBC connectivity. In this case, I'm going to use the web user interface. So we give each one of our customers their own URL into their own account. So my account, AZ Demo 11. We're going to log in here. This is Marie. I love a live demo when it works. Okay, this is the web user interface. So I'm logged in as Marie. The other nice thing about this is it creates a single uniform way for managing security into your infrastructure, because we have role-based access control. So now you can manage, and we connect into your LDAP infrastructure to be able to do authentication into Snowflake. So what we've done here is I have 4 tabs. I've got databases, right? Because we are, and just under the covers, we're a columnar MPP style data warehouse. We are a database. We're trying to make data warehousing simple. You bring your DDL, you load your data, you run your queries at petabyte scale. So we're taking away all the infrastructure stuff, managing all of that stuff, and making it easy to access that data. But with a database, you end up with databases. You end up with tables. You end up with rows. You end up with columns. In this case, what I'm going to do, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, we can also natively ingest JSON, Avro, XML, Parquet, Orc, some of these other data types that you start to see in these data lake infrastructures. And we actually shred that data on ingest and columnarize it, and in essence index it, create statistics on it. So let's go ahead and do some of that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to spin up a warehouse. So I mentioned clusters. So we're going to call this campaign warehouse. And I'm going to query, what I'm going to do is query some Twitter data, because I did some analysis and it said there are 700 different agencies, departments that use Twitter. I know one in particular that uses it a lot, right? So we're going to do, we'll call this the campaign warehouse. And then I select the size of cluster that I want to use to go after that data, to process that data. In this case, I'm going to do a 4-node cluster, which is really just VMs, right, underneath the covers. I can have multiple clusters that I can put into the same endpoint. So that way I can have high concurrency. And let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now I have a 4-node cluster ready to roll. And I know I'm already running out of time, but I'm going to keep going. All right, so the data that I'm going to load is I have in Azure Blob Storage, I have a bunch of Twitter files. So you can see they're actually JSON files compressed, gzipped. So we're going to go ahead and load them into Snowflake. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table. Let's call it the tweets table. Inside the tweets table, we're going to have a variant column, and we're going to have a timestamp. Oh, I didn't select the warehouse. My fault. Yes, I know. I need to use a database. I gotcha. So the database, we're going to do Twitter. Warehouse, we're going to use the campaign warehouse. Let's try it again. Live demo. All right, so we created the tweets table. So this has a column, variant. That's where we're loading all of the data. When we load that JSON into that variant column, we're automatically going to create subcolumns, and we're actually going to index all of those columns on ingest, collecting metadata, min, max, cardinality, all of this information that we're going to use in order to query that data. So let's go ahead and let's copy all of that data into the tweets table. All right, now while that's going on, another cool feature is typically when you size a data warehouse, you're kind of done. Unless you have more data, then you resize it and it becomes a whole migration project. With Snowflake, the cool thing is I can actually just resize my warehouse on the fly. Let's go from a 4-node cluster to an 8-node cluster, right? Now I can do more processing. All right, so now I loaded all of that data, so we can do a select, right? We'll just select one row, and we can see it is a tweet, right? It's JSON. Grab it. And it's a live JSON. I apologize if there's anything bad in there. It's not my fault. All right, so this is a tweet. So the interesting part about that is each one of those key values in the key value pair becomes a subcolumn of tweet. So, and I'll show you that here in a sec. So then the other thing we can do is we can create an external table. So now I'm going to create a different table. I'm going to call it raw. And I'm going to basically point out, oh, why did that work? I'm going to point out to, oh, JSON doesn't exist. Yes, it does. All right, I'm trying. Oh, it's in the sales database. I see. Twitter, JSON, file format. JSON, it's there. Told you it's there. Oh, it's in the data schema. All right, fair enough. Data. All right, let's try that. That's fine. I want it to create the table. So it's basically just an empty table. It's going to point out to the raw Twitter. So right now, if I just query the table, there's no data in there. But now if I point to the external location that's sitting over in blob storage, and I do a query against it, let's pull all the data out. It's going to take a minute because I didn't index it, do all the stuff that I did in the first table. Now I have to go out, grab all the data, bring it in, and execute the query against it. And then it will come back. It will come back. And now I can see all that JSON data, right? Ta-da! So I can query it in the database, or I can query it external to the database. And because I'm running out of time, I'll do one other thing, which is show you this. So now that I have it in the database, the way I would query it is I would select from the tweet column and then go after each one of the keys.
Mike, you can't be heard the live.
Oh, sorry. Keep doing that. Apologize. So what you do is you query the tweet column and you query each one of the keys. And you can do that in SQL, and then you can combine it with regular CSV tables, anything like that, and you can do this at petabyte scale. Whew. All right, I'm running out of time. Let me take a couple of questions real quick because I didn't get to do everything I wanted to there. Questions, comments? Yes.
What about geolocation or geometry? Is it you were querying against that?
Great question. The answer is not yet, but I can basically ingest GeoJSON, but I can't really do too much with it. But I can ingest it. Yes.
So one of your key selling points is that you're able to spin these up, like you can break up your warehouse into smaller pieces and break it up. Is that sort of the key?
Correct, right? So you let's say you have a group that does ETL, right? They're loading data in. You've got a group that's doing business intelligence. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 1,000 people. You can set them up with their own set of data warehouses. Maybe you've got a data science team that wants to spin up really large warehouses, but they only want to execute for a short amount of time. They can spin up a 128 node cluster, crush the data, and then spin that down, because it's a utility-based model, right? You spin the clusters up, you execute your queries, then you spin them down, right? And you're only charged for what you use.
Under the covers, you're still based on MPP, is that right?
Correct. It's an MPP-style data warehouse.
Thank you.
Yes?
How secure is it to move on-premise to the cloud? How secure is it?
Yeah, security is always a fun conversation. The answer is we like to think we're the most secure platform on the planet, right? I know that's a big statement, right? But a couple of things. All connections into Snowflake are secure using TLS. So we do basically you have to tunnel your way in, whether you do on ODBC, JDBC, or any other way into Snowflake. You can do IP whitelisting. We encrypt all data at rest as it comes into Snowflake. We have role-based access control. We have customer managed keys. If you want to participate in the key management process, we can basically hook up to your key management system, and at any time you can shut that access off, so there's no access to the data. So there's a lot of things, and then there's all the process stuff, right? We're HIPAA compliant, PCI compliant, FedRAMP ready, all of those types of things. So we're going through all the process things also along the way. Oh wow, all kinds of questions.
Yeah. Do you support data
We currently do not.
You have a partner.
We do have a partner that we are working with in order to do that, but that starts to create, it's interesting because it starts to create man-in-the-middle type scenarios that we're currently trying to avoid, but we are going to start to architect for.
Who is your partner?
Data guys.
Correct.
So is there any limitation on the number of rows or records can be processed?
No, I was trying not to brag, but we literally have customers with 5,000 users and over 15 petabytes of data in the system. I mean, this.
Since you are indexing on the fly.
Right, we're indexing on the fly. We're collecting metadata about, we basically store micropartitions on the underlying storage infrastructure. And so we're collecting metadata about each one of those micropartitions. And then that's the metadata that we're storing. And we use that in order to execute the queries and basically prune the amount of data that we're putting up onto the MPP cluster in order to execute those queries. Sure.
Is the Snowflake available in the Azure Gov Cloud?
Currently not in Azure Gov Cloud yet.
If you could just repeat the question.
Oh, sure. Good point. Yes, is Snowflake available on the Azure Gov Cloud? Currently, no, but that is a strategic direction that we are heading in. Right now, it's on Azure East 2, I believe. Okay. Hopefully you got some of that. I did the same presentation in an hour and a half, and I didn't get through it this afternoon, so trying to do this in 15 minutes was fun. So thank you.